Hi, this is Konairai, and welcome to part 2 of our dive into Stormwind's Royal Library and the lore held within its books. Book number 4. This is the book that should summarize what happened after Warcraft 1, after the initial war between humans and orcs, and the orcs expanding all the way to the Stormwind and capturing it. Lord Lothar rallied the remnants of Azeroth's armies after they defeated Stormwind Keep, and then launched a massive exodus across the sea to the northern kingdoms of Lorderon. Convinced that the Horde would overcome all of humanity if left unchecked, the leaders of 7 human nations met and agreed to unite in what would become known as the Alliance of Lorderon. For the first time in nearly 3,000 years, the desperate nations of Arathor were once again united under a common banner. Appointed as a supreme commander of the Alliance forces, Lord Lothar prepared his armies for the coming of the Horde. Aided by his lieutenants Urta the Lightbringer, Admiral Daniel Proudmoore, and Turalion, Lothar was able to convince Lorderon's demi-human races of the impending threat as well. The Alliance succeeded in gaining the support of the stoic dwarfs of Ironforge and a small number of high elves of Quel'Thalas. The elves, led at the time by Anasterian Sunstrider, were largely uninterested in the coming conflict. However, they were duty bound to aid Lothar because he was the last descendant of the Arathi bloodline which had aided the elves in ages past. The Horde, now led by Warchief Doomhammer, brought in ogres from its homeworld of Draenor and conscripted the disenfranchised Amardi forest trolls into its fold. Setting out on a massive campaign to overrun the dwarven kingdom of Kash Madan and the southern reaches of Lorderon, the Horde effortlessly decimated all opposition. The epic battles of Second War ranged from large-scale naval skirmishes to massive aerial dogfights. Somehow, the Horde had unearthed a powerful artifact known as a demon soul and used it to enslave the ancient dragon queen Alexstrasza. Threatening to destroy her precious eggs, the Horde forced Alexstrasza to send her grown children to war. The noble red dragons were forced to fight for the Horde, and fought they did. The war raged across continents of Kashmadan, Lorderon, and Azeroth itself. As part of its northern campaign, the Horde succeeded in burning down the borderlands of Quel'Thalas, whereby enslaving the elves' final commitment to the Alliance cause. The greater cities and townships of Lorderon were razed and devastated by the conflict. Despite the absence of reinforcements and overwhelming odds, Lothar and his allies succeeded in holding their enemies at bay. However, during the final days of the Second War, as the Horde's victory over the Alliance seemed almost assured, a terrible feud erupted between the two most powerful orcs of Azeroth. As Doomhammer prepared his final assault against the capital city of Lorderon, an assault that would have crushed the last remnants of the Alliance, Gul'dan and his followers abandoned their posts and set out to the sea. The bewildered Doomhammer, having lost nearly half of his standing forces to Gul'dan's treachery, was forced to pull back and forsake his greatest chance at victory over the Alliance. The power-hungry Gul'dan, obsessed with obtaining godhood itself, set out on desperate search for the undersea tomb of Sargeras, that he believed held the secrets of ultimate power. Having already doomed his fellow orcs to become the slaves of the Burning Legion, Gul'dan thought nothing of his supposed duty to Doomhammer. Backed by the Storm Reaver and the Twilight's Hammer clans, Gul'dan succeeded in raising the Tome of Sargeras from the seafloor. However, when he opened the ancient flooded vault, he fought only crazed demons awaiting him. Seeking to punish the wayward orcs for their costly betrayal, Doomhammer sent his forces to kill Gul'dan and bring the renegades back to the fold. For his recklessness, Gul'dan was torn apart by the maddened demons he had set loose. With their leader dead, the renegade clans quickly fell before Doomhammer's enraged legions. Though the rebellion had been quelled, the Horde was unable to recoup the terrible losses it had suffered. Gul'dan's betrayal had afforded the Alliance not only hope, but also time to regroup and retaliate. Lord Lothar, seeing that the Horde was fracturing from within, gathered the last of his forces and pushed Doomhammer south, back into the shattered heartland of Stormwind. There, the Alliance forces trapped the retreating Horde within the volcanic fortress of Blackrock Spire. Though Lord Lothar fell in battle at the spire's base, his lieutenant, Turalian, rallied the Alliance forces at the 11th hour and drove the Horde back into the abysmal swamp of sorrows. Turalian forces succeeded in destroying the Dark Portal, the mystical gateway that connected orcs to their homeworld of Draenor. Cut off from their reinforcements and fractured by infighting, the Horde finally buckled in upon itself and fell before the might of the Alliance. The scattered orc clans were quickly rounded up and placed within guarded internment camps. Though it seemed that the Horde had been defeated for good, some remained highly skeptical that the place would last. Khadgar, now an archmage of some renown, convinced the Alliance High Command to build the fortress of Nethergard that would watch over the ruins of the Dark Portal and ensure that there would be no further invasions from Draenor. Book number 5, Beyond the Dark Portal. Only a few months after Nethergard's completion, the energies of the Dark Portal coalesced and opened up a new gateway to Draenor. The remaining orc clans, under the leadership of Elder Shaman Ner'zhul, charged forth into Azeroth once again, intent on stealing a number of magical artifacts that would increase Ner'zhul's power. The orcs planned to open up new portals into Draenor that would allow them escape their doomed Red World forever. Convinced that Ner'zhul was planning a new offensive against the Alliance, King Tyrannus of Lorderon sent his armies into Draenor to end the orcish threat once and for all. Led by Khadgar and the great general Turalian, the Alliance forces clashed within the orcs across the burning landscape. Even with the aid of elven ranger Alleria, the dwarf Kurdran, and the veteran soldier Danath, Khadgar was unable to prevent Ner'zhul from opening his portal to other worlds. The tremendous magical storms caused by the portal's converging energies began to tear the ravaged world apart. The Ner'zhul, followed only by his most trusted servants, managed to escape through one of the portals as Khadgar fought desperately to return his comrades to Azeroth. Realizing that he would be trapped on the dying world, Khadgar and his companions selflessly decided to destroy the Dark Portal so that Azeroth would not be harmed by Draenor's violent destructions. By all accounts, the heroes were successful in destroying the portal and saving Azeroth, but whether or not they escaped the death throes of Draenor remains to be seen. Book number 6, Aftermath of the Second War. The devastating Second War against the Orcish Horde left the Alliance of Lorderon in a state of shock and disarray. The bloodthirsty orcs, led by the mighty warchief Ogrim Doomhammer, not only smashed their way through the dwarf-held lands of Kashmadan, but had razed many of Lorderon's central provinces as well. The unrelenting orcs even succeeded in ravaging the elven remote kingdom of Quel'Thalas before their rampage was finally stopped. The Alliance armies led by Sir Anduin Lothar, Uther the Lightbringer, and Admiral Daniel Proudmoore pushed the orcs south into the shattered land of Azeroth, the first kingdom to fall before the orcs' ruthless onslaught. The Alliance forces under Sir Lothar managed to push Doomhammer's clans out of Lorderon and back into the orcish-controlled lands of Azeroth. Lothar's forces surrounded the orcs' volcanic citadel of Blackrock Spire and laid siege to their defenses. In a last-ditch effort, Doomhammer and his lieutenants staged a daring charge from the spire and clashed with Lothar's paladins in the center of the burning steppes. Doomhammer and Lothar squared off in a titanic battle that left both mighty combatants battered and drained. Though Doomhammer narrowly succeeded in vanquishing Lothar, the great hero's death did not have the effect of the warchief had hoped for. Turelian, Lothar's most trusted lieutenant, took up Lothar's blood-stained shield and rallied his grief-stricken brethren into vicious counterattack. Under the rugged standards of both Lorderon and Azeroth, Turelian's troops slaughtered the bulk of Doomhammer's remaining forces in a glorious but terrible rout. There was nothing left for the ragged, scattered orc survivors but to flee to the last standing bastion of orcish power, the Dark Portal. Turelian and his warriors chased the remaining orcs through the festering swamp of sorrows and into the corrupted blasted lands where the Dark Portal stood. There, at the foot of the colossal portal, the broken Horde and their rugged alliance clashed in what would be the last, bloodiest battle of the Second War. Outnumbered and driven mad by the curse of their bloodlust, the orcs inevitably fell before the wrath of the Alliance. Doomhammer was taken prisoner and escorted to Lorderon while his broken clans were rounded up and hauled north back to Lorderon. Book number 7. The New Horde. The chief warden of the internment camps, Aedelas Blackmore, watched over the captive orcs from his prison stronghold, Durnhold. One orc in particular had always held his interest, the orphaned infant he had found nearly 18 years before. Blackmore had raised the young male as a favorite slave and named him Thrall. Blackmore taught the orc about tactics, philosophy, and combat. Thrall was even trained as a gladiator, all the while the corrupt warden sought to mold the orc into a weapon. Despite his harsh upbringing, young Thrall grew into a strong, quick-witted orc, and he knew in his heart that the slave life was not for him. As he grew into maturity, he learned about his people, the orcs, whom he had never met. After their defeat, most of them had been placed in internment camps. Rumor had it that Doomhammer, the orc leader, had escaped from Lorderon and gone into hiding. Only one rogue clan still operated in secret, trying to evade the watchful eyes of the Alliance. The resourceful yet inexperienced Thrall decided to escape from Blackmore's fortress and set off to find others of his kind. During his journeys, Thrall visited the internment camps and found his once mighty race to be strangely cowed and lethargic. Having not found the proud warriors he had hoped to discover, Thrall set out to find the last undefeated orc chieftain, Grom Hellscream. Constantly haunted by the humans, Hellscream nevertheless held on to the Horde's unquenchable will to fight. Aided only by his own devoted, war-song clan, Hellscream continued to wage an underground war against the oppression of his beleaguered people. Unfortunately, Hellscream could never find a way to rouse the captured orcs from their stupor. The impressionable Thrall, inspired by Hellscream's idealism, developed a strong empathy for the Horde and its warrior traditions. Seeking the truth of his own origins, Thrall traveled north to find the legendary Frostwolf clan. Thrall learned that Gul'dan had exiled the Frostwolves during the early days of the First War. He also discovered that he was the son and the heir to the orc hero Durotan, the true chieftain of the Frostwolves who had been murdered in the wilds nearly 20 years before. Under the tutelage of the venerable shaman Dreg Thrar, Thrall studied his people's ancient shamanic culture, which had been forgotten under the Gul'dan's evil rule. Over time, Thrall became a powerful shaman and took his rightful place as a chieftain in the exiled Frostwolves. Empowered by the elements themselves and driven to find his destiny, Thrall set off to free the captive clans and heal his race's demonic corruption. Empowered by elements themselves and driven to find his destiny, Thrall set off to free the captive clans and heal his race of demonic corruption. During his travels, Thrall found the aged warchief Ogrim Doomhammer, who had been living as a hermit for many years. Doomhammer, who had been a close friend of Thrall's father, decided to follow the young visionary orc and help him free the captive clans. Supported by many of the veteran chieftains, Thrall ultimately succeeded revitalizing the Horde and giving his people a new spiritual identity. To symbolize his people's rebirth, Thrall returned to Blackmoor's fortress of Durnhold and put a decisive end to his former master's plan by laying siege to the internment camps. This victory was not without its price. During the liberation of one camp, Doomhammer fell in battle. Thrall took up Doomhammer's legendary warhammer and donned his black plate armor and became the new war chief of the Horde. During the following months, Thrall's small but volatile Horde laid waste to the internment camps and stymied the Alliance's best efforts to counter his clever strategies. Encouraged by his best friend and mentor, Grom Hellscream, Thrall worked to ensure that his people would never be slaves again. Book number 8. The Civil War in the Plaguelands. Ner'zhul, the Lich King, knew that his time was short. Imprisoned within the Frozen Throne, he suspected that Kil'jaeden would send his agents to destroy him. The damage caused by Illidan's spell had ruptured the Frozen Throne, thus the Lich King was losing its power daily. Desperate to save himself, he called his greatest mortal servant to his aid, the Death Knight, Prince Arthas. Though his powers were drained by the Lich King's weakness, Arthas had been involved in civil war in Lorderon. Half of the standing undead forces, led by the banshee Sylvanas Windrunner, staged a coup for control over the undead empire. Arthas, called by the Lich King, was forced to leave the scourge in the heads of his lieutenant Kel'Thuzad as the war escalated through the Plaguelands. Ultimately, Sylvanas and her rebel undead, known as the Forsaken, claimed the ruined capital city of Lorderon as their own. Constructing their own bastion beneath the wrecked city, the Forsaken vowed to defeat the Scourge and drive Kel'Thuzad and his minions from the land. Awakened but determined to save his master, Arthas reached Northrend only to find Illidan's Naga and Blood Elves waiting for him. He and his Nerubian allies raced against Illidan's forces to reach the ice-crowned glacier and defend the Frozen Throne.